And now to the death of Fidel Castro. The remains of Cuba's former leader continue the trek across the country today. This is video from this afternoon when they passed through the city of Mediodía. They are more than halfway to their final destination, the city of Santiago de Cuba. The 500-mile journey will be completed by tomorrow. And that is where our crews have set up to bring you live reports from Cuba. Let's turn now to my colleague, Calvin Hughes. He is live right there in Santiago de Cuba. Calvin.
Lori, good afternoon. You can see just over my shoulder here that the stage is set, and they have been working on that for most of the day, but under the baking sun, Santiago is in full anticipation and getting ready to welcome world leaders at tomorrow's mass rally for Fidel Castro. We're still at least a day away from that memorial service at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, but here's a look at how the government and its organizers are getting ready. Workers put down platforms for the media. Reporters from all over the world are here, and take a look. We saw school children away from studying and still dressed up in their school uniforms, putting out chairs for guests. This happened at around 1 o'clock today. Now, barricades were also set up for crowd control as thousands are expected to fill the plaza of de la Revolucion of Antonio Maceo. Now, here's a snapshot of the official guest list of world leaders, and their names that are included on that list include nearly every head of state from the Latin American nations, especially from the leftist-leaning nations like Venezuela, Bolivia, Nicaragua, and Ecuador. The former Spanish King Juan Carlos I will attend, and a very rare appearance by Castro's widow, her name Dalia, and Castro's 11 children could reportedly make an appearance here tomorrow, or Saturday rather, for that mass rally. And then the actor Danny Glover is said to be on the list as well, and not on that list though is Castro's estranged sister Juanita Castro, whom Local 10 spoke with earlier this week. She says she will not leave Miami to attend the funeral here in Santiago de Cuba. I want to bring in now reporter Glenda Milberg, who has been out and about all day and had a chance to go to lunch. And my taxi cab driver, after we waited for an hour and a half for lunch, he turned to me and he said, you know, this would be better if the blockade or if the embargo was gone. You would have had lunch in probably about a half hour, but that seems to be the talk all around town today.
All day, every day, and we understand not only today. And I want to show you something that there's a press center for this event, also a lot of foreign press. And I want to make sure you see this whole cover. Notice it's in English. This was put out by the state government media here in Cuba about the blockade, calling it a crime against humanity. The U.S. embargo continues to be a tool, if you will, for the Castro government to tell its people here everything that you think is wrong with your life is about the embargo. I want to show you some video. No matter what neighborhood you go into, and we've been in several today, everybody not only knows about the U.S. blockade, all about it, but is quite well convinced that the poverty that they live in and the difficulty in their lives, be it spotty electricity or lack of running water, is all because the U.S. has blockaded this island for the last 50 or so years, even though many other countries around the world are here with products and services and commerce. These are the things that they overlook in light of the fact that they are bombarded with this kind of propaganda, if you will, about the U.S. embargo. There are things now that are circumventing that slowly. One is the internet, we find. Another is this influx of tourists, and especially American tourists. And there are those we talked to today who, as a tourist, see a little opening in the propaganda machine. Take a listen.
We're going to be forced to change. You see that in more countries around the world. If there's change, it's going to change rapidly.
Such an interesting perspective from a Dutch tourist already seeing changes because of the outside world seeping in many ways. The indoctrination / education, depending on your perspective, is what you want to call it, begins at a very early age here. We were at the Moncada Barracks, such an important place in Cuban history, the birthplace of the revolution, which is now a school. And the kids in the school are preparing to receive this caravan down their street, and we're going to talk about them and the future of the revolution with this generation at the lead when we see you back here in an hour.
And you know, I had a chance to show earlier some kids who are out here putting down some of the chairs for the guests
who
will attend. And then earlier, just maybe an hour ago, we saw some kids walking by again. Don't know if they were just cutting through to get home or if they were just part of the show and tell, knowing that a lot of TV cameras are out here.
And that they are very excited about this. This is their life in school. Fidel, what do they say? Yo soy Fidel is what
yes.
they've been saying this morning. I am Fidel. This is a very exciting moment for them as a young revolutionary.
And that's part of that indoctrination versus whether it
education,
is education
and whatever
in the
your
classroom.
perspective is.
All right, we'll stay right here for just a moment. Glenn, I want to show you something. We had a chance to go out in the neighborhoods as well, reporting out there, and I ran into someone who happened to be one of the rebels who fought alongside Fidel Castro nearly 60 years ago. There's no doubt about where he stands in terms of honoring Fidel Castro and the revolution. Let's take a look. Santiago may be best known as the cradle of the revolution, but it's a city that has never quite matured over 5 decades. Like the rest of Cuba, stuck in a time that some generations in America don't even remember and others can't relate to. But living in the past is what Horacio Benavides Piedra loves to do.
Para mí, él no ha muerto.
He says, for me, Castro hasn't died. He's still alive, and that's how I'm going to remember him in my time on Earth.
Cuando visitó el Central primero de enero.
This is especially true with Cuba's state-run television airing Fidel Castro documentaries 24/7 since the revolutionary's death on Friday.
Porque yo soy combatiente del ejército rebelde también.
Horacio says, I'm a combatant. I was in the battalion of Camilo Cienfuegos. I have maintained.
Y he mantenido.
The 80-year-old says he was one of the original rebels of the Cuban Revolution, fighting alongside the Castro brothers. Horacio says his wife, who died 2 years ago, was also one of Castro's rebels.
Esto lo vamos a mantener hasta lo infinito.
We're going to maintain this revolution until infinity, he says. He may have left us physically, but his thoughts, his history, his belief will stay with us. And that is certainly the story of Horacio Piedra. Now, I want to tell you some breaking news here, report some breaking news from the Cuban American National Foundation. And I'm reading here, and it says, denouncing what they say is, quote, the increased oppression, violence, and overt surveillance by the Cuban government following the death of Fidel Castro. They say a number of individuals have experienced beatings and detentions and threats for not mourning the death of Fidel Castro. That is the story that we're following, and we also have a story similar to that coming up in our broadcast for the next couple of hours. So we'll have a lot more on that and everything that's happening out here at the Plaza de la Revolución of Antonio Maceo. So for now, I'll see you at 5:30 at the bottom of the hour. We'll have a lot more news at that time. But I'm Calvin Hughes reporting live from Santiago de Cuba. I'll send it back to you, Victor and Lori.
All right, Calvin, thanks so much. We want to let everyone know to stay with Local 10 News for this weekend's funeral of Fidel Castro. Calvin and Glenna and Hasselvella will be there reporting it all.